They told you emotional intelligence would make you kind. They lied. In truth, it's a weapon. One that can crown you as a master of minds or expose you as a monster hiding behind charm. Today, you'll learn the art of wielding emotion not as a heart, but as a blade. In the grand theater of human behavior, emotion is the invisible currency of power. The weak are ruled by their feelings. The wise learn to rule through them. A prince does not rise because he feels deeply, but because he understands how others do. To read emotion is to read the human soul. To command it is to own the stage upon which all play their part. But here lies the paradox. Every virtue carried too far becomes a vice. Emotional intelligence, when stripped of morality, becomes the mask of manipulation, the art of appearing gentle while pulling the strings. So, ask yourself before we begin, do you seek harmony or dominion? People will tell you that empathy is the highest form of intelligence. They're wrong. Empathy is not merely understanding emotion. It's possessing the architecture of another's mind. And once you can map it, you can move it. Imagine standing before someone who believes you care. They open themselves, revealing their fears, their hopes, their cracks. You nod, you smile, you listen. But inside, you're not feeling, you're studying. Every word, every gesture becomes a coordinate in their emotional design. That is not compassion. That is control. History remembers men who used empathy not to heal, but to rule. Julius Caesar, adored by the Roman mob, understood their longing better than any philosopher. He wept at their losses, lowered himself among them, spoke like one of them, but each tear was deliberate, an act of strategy. His empathy was performance, and through it, he captured an empire. You see, people confuse feeling with understanding. The first enslaves you, the second sets you free. The emotional man reacts, the intelligent one calculates. When you learn to see emotion as data, you step outside the chaos that consumes others. You no longer drown in their storms. You navigate them. Ask yourself, when someone cries before you, what do you see? A moment of pain or a moment of opportunity? The masses comfort to feel virtuous. The strategist comforts to gain position. You're not feeding their soul. You're feeding their dependence. A mother uses empathy to soothe a child. A ruler uses it to calm rebellion. The act looks identical. The intent is worlds apart. Even in modern life, the lesson remains unchanged. Consider the executive who listens patiently as his rival vents frustration. He nods, mirrors emotion, says little. The rival believes he's found an ally, but beneath that silence, calculations unfold. Every confession becomes leverage. Empathy here is not love, it's surveillance. People crave to be understood more than they crave to be loved. That is their weakness. And if you can make someone feel understood, they will hand you their loyalty, their trust, even their obedience. All without realizing they've surrendered. But here's the paradox, Di. The best manipulators are not heartless. They appear deeply human. They've learned that emotional mastery demands imitation, not immersion. They mimic the tone, the gaze, the rhythm of the wounded. Like actors on a dark stage, they perform feeling while staying untouched by it. That is the essence of the mask of empathy. Consider the diplomat who negotiates peace between enemies. He listens to both sides, nodding with sincere understanding. Each believes he favors them. Each sees in his eyes what they want to see. In truth, he favors only stability, his own advantage hidden behind empathy's veil. Such men do not speak in bursts of emotion, they speak in layers. They hide intent beneath tone, calculation behind warmth. Their kindness feels genuine because they've rehearsed it longer than most have lived honestly. Now, you may ask, doesn't this make one a monster? Perhaps, but remember, monsters are simply those who see truth without flinching. The world praises compassion because it keeps the herd docile. It fears strategic empathy because it strips away illusion. Still, control without awareness becomes tyranny. Awareness without restraint becomes madness. The master strategist uses empathy like a scalpel. Precise, purposeful, never indulgent. He feels enough to connect, but not enough to collapse. Learn to read eyes, tone, pauses. The invisible language of intent. When someone speaks, don't listen to words, listen to why they need you to hear them. Every emotion hides a demand. Every demand hides a weakness, and weakness, once seen, becomes a lever. But beware, the mask you wear too long may begin to fuse with your skin. There is a danger in the art. When you start mimicking emotion so often, you may forget what sincerity once felt like. The line between control and corruption blurs, and you may wake one day surrounded by people who love you, but none who know you. Empathy can build empires or destroy souls. It depends who holds it. The choice, as always, lies in intent. Will you use it to manipulate chaos into order, or will it consume you, as it did so many who thought themselves untouchable? Remember this: the one who feels too much becomes a servant. The one who understands feeling becomes a master. And in this game of faces, masks, and motives, those who cannot read emotion will always serve those who can. Now ask yourself, if empathy is the mask, what hides behind yours? In a world drunk on noise, silence is the last form of power. Everyone wants to be heard. Few remember the value of not speaking. Words reveal more than truth. They reveal strategy. And the one who speaks first often loses. A prince once said, "Let others exhaust themselves explaining who they are. I will watch and learn who they truly are." Every fool rushes to fill silence with words, unaware that silence itself is a blade, cold, invisible, and sharper than any tongue. Think of it this way: when you speak, you spend power. When you stay silent, you accumulate it. You've seen it before. The man who interrupts, who dominates a room with noise, thinking his volume commands respect. But power is not in loudness. It is in presence, and presence is born of restraint. The most dangerous men in history were rarely those who shouted. They were those who waited. Julius Caesar, before crossing the Rubicon, listened to his generals argue. He spoke only when the room grew still. One sentence from him carried the weight of 100 arguments. That is the discipline of silence, to make every word so rare it commands obedience when finally spoken. Ask yourself, why do you speak when you do? Prove, to defend, to fill discomfort. Each of these motives betrays weakness. The truly powerful are unbothered by misunderstanding. They know truth does not vanish just because others fail to see it. In conversation, silence unsettles the insecure. They rush to interpret it, to fill it, to make it disappear. And in their rush, they reveal themselves. Their insecurities spill out like water from a cracked vase. You, meanwhile, say nothing and learn everything. Silence turns you into a mirror. People will speak their fears into your quiet. They'll project their guilt, their motives, their hopes. They will show you who they are, because they cannot stand not knowing who you are. The power of silence lies not in emptiness, but in tension. The unspoken word carries more weight than the one uttered. The pause before you respond can decide whether you appear wise or weak, calm or cornered. Every negotiation, every argument, every seduction follows this law. The one who controls the tempo controls the outcome. And silence slows time to your rhythm. Consider diplomacy. Kings and ambassadors would spend days negotiating through silence. One side would offer a proposal. The other would wait. That waiting, the unreadable stillness, would create fear. Fear of rejection, fear of offense, fear of hidden plans. And in that fear, concessions are born. This is psychological dominance through absence. You make them feel your silence as pressure. You make them crave your words as validation. Soon, they begin to chase your approval just to fill the void you've created. Even in personal life, silence is armor. When insulted, the impulsive man retaliates, the wise one watches. Your silence tells the aggressor that their words mean nothing, and nothing is more humiliating to the weak than being ignored. But silence is not passivity. It's preparation. It's the gathering of data, the sharpening of thought, the storing of emotional energy. The strategist observes the battlefield before striking. The same law governs speech. Every silence hides potential. Every pause is a question unasked. However, there's a danger here. Silence without observation is emptiness. Silence without strategy is cowardice. To master it, your silence must be alive, listening, dissecting, preparing. You must know when to speak. A perfectly timed word, after long silence, hits harder than any speech. It's like a sword drawn after stillness. Its sound echoes longer because of the waiting that preceded it. The masses believe wisdom comes from talking. They think leadership means persuasion. They think attention is earned by sound. But the true art of power is presence without performance. The wolf doesn't need to roar to remind the sheep he's there. In counsel, in conflict, in love, learn to weaponize your silence. Let others reveal their intentions while you conceal yours. Let them stumble over words while you build certainty in quiet. You are not avoiding battle, you are setting the stage. Remember, restraint is not weakness. It's the highest form of self-command. The one who cannot stay silent cannot rule himself. And the one who cannot rule himself cannot rule others. So the next time you feel the urge to explain, to justify, to respond, don't let silence speak the language of power. Because sometimes the deadliest answer is no answer at all. Every mind is a maze, but most people will open their gates willingly, if they believe you are one of them. That is the secret of emotional reflection, not to dominate through fear, but to align through illusion. Humans crave similarity like a starving man craves bread. They are drawn not to truth, but to reflection, to those who seem to understand, to those who make them feel seen. And that is where influence begins. When you mirror another's emotion, you make their world smaller. Their defenses soften. Their suspicion fades. You transform from stranger to ally, from observer to confidant. Consider a cunning courtier in the Florentine palaces. He listens to a powerful noble lament his burdens. The courtier frowns when the noble frowns, sighs when the noble sighs, and laughs softly at his own misfortunes, as though he, too, carries the same invisible chains. By the time the wine is finished, the noble feels understood, respected, perhaps even loved. But what truly happened was a quiet conquest. The courtier did not reveal himself, he absorbed another. That is the essence of reflection. You do not project, you echo. You become the emotional shape of the person before you. In doing so, you guide them gently toward the conclusion you already chose. Ask yourself, when someone mirrors your tone, your words, your rhythm, how do you feel? Comforted? Safe? You assume alignment, not manipulation, and that assumption blinds you. It's why skilled negotiators repeat your phrasing. It's why seducers adopt your pace of breathing. It's why politicians adjust their accent to the crowd. They are not connecting, they are reflecting. This is psychological alchemy. It turns observation into power, empathy into control. To master it, you must learn to vanish behind another's reflection. When they speak with passion, mirror passion. When they hesitate, mirror restraint. Soon they will see in you what they wish to see in themselves. In truth, this art is older than kingdoms. The serpent in every myth reflects its prey before striking. Even in war, generals win not by brute force, but by reflecting their enemy's movement, anticipating, adapting, and then destroying. Emotional reflection is the same battle, fought within the mind. But here lies the subtlety. Mirroring is not mimicry. Mimicry exposes the fool. Reflection hides the master. It's not about copying gestures. It's about absorbing energy, emotion, and intent. You must feel what they feel just enough to reproduce it, yet never drown in it. A master manipulator wears empathy like a cloak, not a skin. He can take it off at will. Psychologically, people bond fastest with those who validate their emotions. It's not logic that binds humans, it's resonance. And when someone feels emotionally matched, they surrender critical thought. They stop analyzing. They start trusting. Imagine a leader who mirrors the anger of his people. He doesn't calm them, he amplifies them. Soon, they call him their voice, their truth. He is neither. He is their reflection, feeding back their fire until it burns for him. That is how revolutions are born. Even in personal life, reflection reigns. Lovers who say, "I feel the same," build connection not through truth, but through symmetry. The moment one heart believes it beats in rhythm with another, it stops guarding itself. That is when the conquest begins. You must understand. People do not fall for you. They fall for the version of themselves that you reflect back to them. That is the most intoxicating illusion of all, to see oneself in another's eyes. The mirror, not the face, becomes the source of attachment. But this weapon carries a cost. When you become everyone's mirror, who are you when no one is watching? The mask that once protected you can dissolve the person beneath it. You may find yourself surrounded by admirers, yet utterly unseen, because no one can see the one who reflects everything. Still, the art remains invaluable. Use it in negotiation to disarm, in persuasion to align, in conflict to dissolve resistance. Mirror emotion first, then redirect it toward your aim. Lead people through their own reflection, and they will believe they walked there by choice. But remember this warning: the mirror that reveals others can also reveal you. One slip, one true emotion, and your reflection shatters. They will see the manipulation in your stillness, the calculation behind your empathy, and what once drew them close will turn them cold. So move carefully in this theater of emotion. Reflect, but never reveal. Guide, but never attach. You are not there to feel. You are there to control feeling. Because the moment you become their mirror, you already own their reflection. Kindness is the most deceptive form of power. People see it as virtue, yet it can be the purest act of calculation. Because the moment compassion is measured, it stops being moral and starts being strategic. You see, compassion isn't always born of love. Sometimes it's born of ambition. And those who understand this truth can move entire worlds with a single act of mercy. In every age, rulers learned this lesson. Julius Caesar forgave his enemies, not because his heart was soft, but because his foresight was sharp. When he spared them, he bought loyalty that fear alone could not sustain. Mercy was his investment, power his return. That is the calculus of compassion, the art of giving not for goodness, but for gain. Ask yourself, when you show kindness, what do you truly seek? Gratitude, recognition, control. Most people give to feel moral, but the wise give to build debt. Gratitude is one of the most binding forces in the human psyche. When someone feels indebted to your kindness, they will defend you, follow you, even lie for you, just to preserve the illusion of their own goodness. They are not serving you. They are serving the story they've built about you. Compassion, then, is not weakness. It is leverage disguised as love. History offers endless proof. When rulers punished harshly, they ruled through fear briefly. When they showed mercy, they ruled through guilt, indefinitely. A man who fears you will hide his hatred. A man who feels he owes you will silence it himself. This is why you must never offer kindness blindly. Every act of compassion must serve a purpose. Kindness without calculation is self-destruction. Consider the modern world. The leader who praises an opponent in public does not do so out of humility. He does it to trap them in obligation. Now, the opponent cannot strike without appearing ungrateful. In politics, compassion is a chain made of gold. It binds the proud tighter than iron. And this applies not only to nations but to you. When you offer empathy to someone in despair, they will attach themselves to you. They will see you as sanctuary, as validation, as a mirror of worth. But understand what truly happens: you've entered their emotional economy. You've loaned them comfort, and now they owe you. Do you see how this works? Every act of giving creates invisible debt. And debt, when understood correctly, becomes control. This does not mean you must become cruel. Cruelty creates rebellion, compassion creates loyalty. But both can serve the same master, strategy. The difference lies in intent. Cruelty forces submission, compassion invites it. One demands obedience, the other earns it. But make no mistake, they are both instruments of power. Even religion understood this truth long before philosophy did. Forgiveness was taught as divine. But in politics, it was used as diplomacy. A ruler who forgives publicly gains moral supremacy. His enemies appear small beside his grace. This is how compassion conquers where armies cannot. The cunning understand that generosity must have timing. Too frequent, and it becomes expected. Too rare, and it loses effect. True mastery lies in rhythm, the calculated dance between warmth and distance. People must need your kindness more than they receive it. That dependency keeps them loyal. Ask yourself again, who truly holds power? The one who gives without thought, or the one who gives with precision? The world worships selflessness, but power favors the deliberate. Every tear you dry, every word of comfort, every gesture of empathy, if placed wisely, becomes a thread in your web. But there is danger in this art. The manipulator who forgets he's acting may begin to believe his own virtue. Once you start to feel what you were only meant to use, the game collapses. Emotion clouds intention. Compassion without discipline becomes a weapon turned inward. A ruler who pities his people too much forgets how to command them. A lover who forgives endlessly invites betrayal. A friend who gives without boundary becomes invisible. This is why compassion must be guided by calculation, not consumed by it. Be warm, but measured. Be kind, but intentional. Because kindness offered without power becomes a confession of weakness, and kindness guided by power becomes a crown invisible to all but those wise enough to see it. So the next time you feel the urge to be compassionate, pause. Ask yourself, not, what do I gain from this? But, what does this make them feel they owe? Because emotion passes, but obligation endures. In the end, the cold truth is this: those who master compassion rule hearts. Those who misunderstand it are ruled by them. Now tell me, do you offer kindness, or do you trade it? Power begins where illusion ends, and nowhere are illusions thicker than in human weakness. To rule, you must understand that people are not guided by reason, but by their private, trembling fears. They are moved by pride, hunger, guilt, and the quiet terror of being unseen. Learn what governs these impulses, and you will command the man, the crowd, and the state alike. Weakness is not always visible. It hides behind laughter, behind kindness, behind moral words. But every weakness reveals itself eventually, because no one can hide what rules them. Look closely at anyone who speaks too loudly of their strength. They are protecting a wound. The braggart fears humiliation. The moralist fears exposure. The lover fears abandonment. The powerful fears replacement. And once you see this, truly see it, you hold the strings that move their souls. In Florence, there was once a nobleman who controlled an entire council, not through wealth or armies, but through knowledge. He knew which man feared poverty, which feared disgrace, which feared being forgotten, and so he whispered promises into each weakness. To one he offered gold, to another reputation, to the third remembrance. None realized they had sold themselves, not for chains, but for comfort. He ruled them all, not by force, but by their reflection in his hand. Do you see? Weakness is the most predictable part of human nature. People may lie, but their fears never do. Ask yourself, what drives you more, ambition or insecurity? When you desire power, is it because you wish to build, or because you wish never to feel small again? Even you are ruled by something. The difference between the weak and the wise is this: the wise study their weakness. The weak serve it. Psychology calls this leverage, finding the emotional key that unlocks behavior. To influence someone, you must first discover what they cannot bear to lose. For some, it's love. For others, control. For most, it's approval. Observe closely. When someone reacts with excessive emotion, you have found the nerve. Touch it again, and they'll move as you wish. Not through force, but through their own unguarded instinct. Consider a negotiation. Two rivals face each other, both brilliant, both calm. But one man knows the other's secret. He despises being seen as inferior, so he provokes him subtly, with a hint of mockery. The rival, burning to prove his worth, overplays his hand. He loses not because he was weaker, but because he couldn't endure the feeling of weakness. That is how power is won. By turning emotion into obedience. Even entire populations can be ruled through weakness. Fear makes them surrender freedom for safety. Pride makes them defend their rulers even when deceived. Desire blinds them to exploitation. People will accept any chain if it's wrapped in the cloth of their comfort. But beware, exploiting weakness demands precision. A blunt hand breaks loyalty. A careful one builds dependence. You must give just enough comfort to keep them pliant, just enough fear to keep them alert. Balance is the art of the manipulator. Too much pressure breeds rebellion, too little breeds indifference. There is, of course, one more subtle truth. Sometimes, to control others, you must first control your own weakness. For every person you master, your own vulnerabilities are being watched. The same way you study others, others study you. They search for the same cracks, for your vanity, your longing for admiration, your hunger to be understood. Show none of it. The moment they glimpse your weakness, they no longer fear your strength. That is why emotional detachment is sacred to the strategist. It does not mean apathy, it means clarity. To feel, but not be ruled by feeling. To understand fear, but not kneel before it. Only then can you dissect the anatomy of weakness without becoming its patient. Think of a chessboard. The king moves slow, but he never panics. Every other piece may fall, yet he watches in silence. His stillness unnerves the opponent. That is what power looks like: emotion contained, weakness understood, control absolute. The masses believe morality protects them from manipulation. It does not. Morality blinds them to it. They think goodness shields them, but in truth, it only exposes their softest parts to those willing to touch them. So learn this law: every weakness, once seen, becomes a lever, and every lever, once pulled, becomes a throne. But remember, when you understand the weaknesses of others, you inherit a silent burden to use that knowledge wisely or to let it devour you. For in studying the fragility of others, you may one day discover your own. Now, ask yourself before we continue: do you seek to heal weakness or to rule through it? There is a kind of strength that frightens people. Not the strength of muscle or command, but of composure. A mind that does not flinch, a face that does not tremble. The world calls it coldness. I call it clarity. Emotions blur vision. Fear rushes the pulse, love clouds judgment, anger distorts reason. But the man who feels and does not fall victim to feeling, he becomes unshakable. Not because he is heartless, but because he governs his own heart. The greatest rulers were not without emotion, they were masters of it. Alexander wept for conquest, Caesar for glory, yet both knew when to silence their tears and draw their sword. They could feel deeply, but act coldly. That balance is the highest art of power. You see, the world will always tell you to follow your heart. But hearts are wild, impulsive things. They lead kings to ruin and lovers to regret. A heart without discipline is a weapon turned inward. Ask yourself, when have you made your worst decisions? In calm or in passion? When you were rational, or when you were ruled by what you felt? People destroy alliances, abandon dreams, and expose secrets. Not through malice, but through emotional chaos. Every empire collapses first in the mind of its ruler. Coldness, therefore, is not cruelty. It is self-command. It is the ability to stand within the storm and hear your own thoughts clearly. Consider a general on the battlefield. His soldiers panic, the enemy advances, blood fills the air. If he allows emotion to guide him, he joins the panic. If he detaches, he sees the pattern, the openings, the rhythm, the flaw in his opponent's advance. Emotion makes him blind, coldness makes him godlike. Psychology confirms what experience already taught rulers. Those who regulate emotion outperform those who express it freely. The calm negotiator controls the heated one. The quiet listener manipulates the talkative. The still mind governs the frantic. In every confrontation, the one who feels less dictates the pace. Because control, not compassion, decides who bends and who breaks. But coldness must be chosen. It cannot be faked for long. Pretending to be indifferent while seething inside is weakness disguised as poise. True emotional discipline begins in observation. When anger rises, you watch it. When fear creeps in, you analyze it. You treat emotion like a servant, useful, but never trusted with command. In truth, detachment is not the absence of humanity, it is the refinement of it. A sculptor cannot shape marble while it's molten, he must wait until it hardens. Likewise, you cannot shape destiny while drowning in feeling. Coldness gives shape to chaos. Yet people will accuse you of being heartless. They will mistake your composure for cruelty, your silence for arrogance. Let them. Their judgment reveals more about their fragility than your intent. The world fears those who cannot be emotionally controlled, because such people cannot be easily ruled. History remembers the calm leaders who acted when others froze. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire with stoic serenity while surrounded by betrayal and death. He did not react, he responded. And that difference separated wisdom from panic. To be cold is to remain strategic where others become sentimental, to see clearly what emotion blinds in others. When everyone else seeks comfort, you seek control. When they crave validation, you crave vision. But there is danger in this virtue. Too much coldness breeds isolation. Detach too long, and you risk becoming untouchable, not powerful, but empty. A mind that never feels eventually stops creating. A heart that never warms eventually forgets why it beats. You must hold both fire and ice. One for movement, one for mastery. Let emotion give you energy, but let coldness give you direction. Think of life as a battlefield of reactions. Every insult, every failure, every praise is bait. If you react, you are led. If you remain still, you lead. Coldness allows you to choose your battles. Not every strike deserves your sword. And when you finally move, it will not be from impulse, but from precision. Your decisions will cut deeper because they were made in silence. That is how power speaks, not through rage, but through restraint. The masses admire passion, the masters practice composure. For emotion burns fast, but clarity endures. In the theater of power, the calm man always writes the final act. So remember this: the fire within you is sacred, but only if you can contain it. Because the moment you lose control of emotion, emotion will control you. And when that happens, the world will no longer fear your power. It will use it against you. Power is rarely taken by force. It is granted by those who never realize they are giving it away. To control people without them knowing is not witchcraft. It is psychology sharpened into strategy. You plant the seed of an idea, water it with suggestion, and let them believe it was their choice all along. Influence works best when it wears the mask of freedom. Those who rule openly are feared for a season. Those who rule silently endure for a lifetime. So ask yourself, do you want to be obeyed or simply followed? Do you crave visible power or the quiet control that shapes outcomes without recognition? The wise know. Visibility is vulnerability. Real dominion thrives in the shadows. Reflect on this truth. Master perception before you attempt persuasion. Now, if this insight struck something in you, leave your thoughts below. Subscribe for more strategies drawn from the darker edge of psychology and philosophy. And share this video so that others may believe they found it on their own.